Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PLAR podcast, where we explore all facets of prior learning assessment and recognition. I'm your host, Andrew Skapenko.
And I'm your co-host, Natalie DeVoe, and we're excited to introduce the guests of this episode. Magali Robitaille and Johanne Laroche are expert counselors in Recognition of Acquired Competencies, RAC, at the Center of Expertise of Cégep Marie-Victorin, CERAC Marie-Victorin in Montreal, Quebec. Magali Robitaille holds a PhD in education from the Université de Genève. She has been working in the continuing education field for 20 years, specifically as a RAC professional for the last 15 years at Cégep Marie-Victorin. She was in charge of various projects such as developing a RAC process and evaluation tools for professional association and providing initial training for new RAC professionals throughout the Province of Quebec.
Johanne Laroche holds a master's degree in career counseling and is a member of the Guidance Counselor Professional Association of Quebec. She has worked for over 20 years in human resources and education and as a RAC professional for the last 5 years at Cégep Marie-Victorin. She has managed RAC processes in various fields and has developed RAC processes for indigenous communities. Both Magali and Johanne are acting as experts in methodology for the development of RAC evaluation tools and coach new experts in the methodology. Welcome to this episode, Johanne and Magali.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have been referring in the introductions to the term RAC. Could you give us some context on what it means?
So RAC is RAC, so it stands for Recognition of Acquired Competencies. So that's how PLAR is called in Quebec. The Ministry of Education made the acronym RAC official in French and in English. If we look at other Francophone countries, the term VAE is very commonly used. So it stands for Validation of Acquired Experience. The outcome, although it's not a diploma, it's a workforce certificate.
Thank you, Johanne. Is there a specific profile to become a RAC counselor in Quebec?
Not a specific profile. RAC professionals come from different fields of expertise. The most common profile you'll see is a university degree in adult education or career counseling.
Tell us about CERAC. How did it come to existence? How does it work? And who are the key stakeholders?
Yes, CERAC stands for Center of Expertise for RAC. They were first created in 2013. So there are two CERACs right now in the province of Quebec, and they both offer support and coaching to all colleges in the province regarding best practices related to RAC. Specifically, they give information and tools to ensure the quality of their RAC process. CERAC teams are composed of experts of the RAC process. Their responsibilities are towards RAC professionals in colleges, as opposed to supporting directly candidates in their RAC processes. Historically, it was the government's wish to implement an official structure to support colleges. The key stakeholders in that implementation of CERACs are the Highest Education Council and the Ministry of Education. Since 2005, the Ministry of Higher Education has provided financial support and guidelines to colleges and financial supports to the CERACs. This is exactly our mandate, to provide diverse formation, diverse training to all the colleges' RAC professionals. So we work with the college RAC professionals. We don't work directly with the candidates. That's the major point that we have to say, because we help the colleges and they help the candidates.
And you help the professionals that are helping the candidates. You're
Exactly.
providing the structure, the training, the expertise, essentially, right?
Exactly. The tools, all the tools that we can provide them, yes.
The next question is about the different types of PLAR or RAC. There's course-based or credit bank, advanced placement, flexible admission, competency-based, portfolio assessments. Can you describe which RAC types are used most frequently in colleges in Quebec?
Presently, we don't use portfolio anymore. It used to be an approach, but now the Ministry of Higher Education decided the RAC would be part of an academic framework. In that matter, the province of Quebec is totally different from RAC processes around the world. In Quebec colleges, all programs are competency-based, whether it's through the RAC process or a course-based program. So they all lead to a diploma.
You moved away from the portfolio-based assessments. Can you tell me when that happened and what were the precursors? Like what led to that decision to really move away from the portfolio-based and focus on the competency-based? What was the motivation?
We were forced in a way, because when we used the portfolio, it was a structure that was really difficult for the candidate. So it's something that takes a long time. It works. The portfolio assessment works for people who have a lot of experience and that they are solid in that experience. And when all the programs in the colleges turned to the competency-based, then we had to follow up with the RAC tools. And that's when we experienced other tools that were not portfolio.
Right. And so I would conclude that it's more accessible now that you are relying on the competency-based. Is that correct?
Yes, it is more accessible for the people, and it is easier to evaluate the competencies for the content specialists. In every part of the offer, it is easier.
Was so interesting for me to hear about the move away from portfolio. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who resonate with that, who relate to that, because it's true. The portfolio, it's very time intensive as the content expert to evaluate. And the individuals really do need a high level of skill and expertise to be able to describe their experience in a way that fits into a portfolio model.
Exactly. And the tools that we use now are built to make it easier for the content specialist to make a decision. So we don't need 3 judges in front of the portfolio to make a decision. We just need one content specialist for each competency, and they have a tool that helps them to make their decision in what level the person has the competency.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
What we mean by a tool, let's say compared to a portfolio, if we have a tool that evaluates organization in office, we will ask for a candidate to submit either a monthly planning for they would do for their regular work where they're at right now, or if they don't have one, they can create one, and we'll give them like a framework where they can put in the information. So if they already have something that they can submit from work, then for them it's not extra work. So a lot of the tools that we can use are we call them, there's one which is a personal production. So it's like a written type of assignment, but the difference between that type of assignment and a regular assignment in class would be that it is experience-based. So tell us about a moment where you had to, I don't know, address a difficulty with an employee. What was your approach? How did you handle the conflict? What was the step taken? Did you refer to HR? And if so, how did it go? Like, this is an example for one competency, let's say in management. It could be a written assignment. It could be an interview with the content specialist. It can be a task that has to be done in person at the Cégep or the college, or it could be an observation that is in the workplace too.
Are there any inventories of competencies that you are using to benchmark the participants' assignments to?
We always refer to the program, the program of study. It's the same program of study, the same competencies and definition that they have to build the courses. So we use the same referential, and we start from that referential that has been made by the ministry. And then we take that and we define what are the essential elements that we want to see. So Johanne was talking about observation. I think that's the main thing, the most interesting thing in that approach is that we go into the workplace of the person and we can observe that person doing her work and then compare that to what we have in our program of study. So we want to see how can she handle all the competencies that are in the program of study. So that's the comparison that we do, and all the thing that the content specialist has to decide is whether it's conform or not to what's written in the program of study.
What are some of the programs that have the highest RAC?
Throughout the province, we have two programs that have the highest level of candidates. It's early childhood education and office administration.
We've touched on the tools and the programs that have the highest RAC numbers. What about the overall processes or one process used by colleges in Quebec? What are some key RAC mechanisms that are used?
So the RAC process is determined by the Ministry of Higher Education to ensure a certain equity and uniformity between programs and all the colleges that offer RAC. From now on, I'll refer to the main steps that are in the RAC process, which is in a document that you can download in the resources area of the podcast. So there are 5 main steps in our RAC process throughout the province. So the first step is information on the RAC process to ensure transparency of our process. So at this stage, candidates are given details on how RAC works, what's the process to help them evaluate if RAC is really the best option for them. They also receive information on all available programs so they can make the best choice in line with their work and life experience, because we always want to make sure that they choose a program that fits their work and life experience. The second step is the submission of the application and self-assessment of competency. So earlier, Magali mentioned that we are based on the program. So in this step, the program candidate is asked to assess what he's gained through his experiences in relation to what is required in the competencies of the program of study. So once that is completed, they hand in their self-assessment, and then the third step is the validation of the application. So that is an essential step in the filtering process to separate potential candidates from candidates that have the level of competencies required to complete the RAC process. So candidates that are not accepted in the RAC process are suggested different options. So taking courses or gaining more experience relevant to the program, and then come back once they have gained more experience. That is the last step before they are officially accepted. So once they start, the fourth step is the evaluation of competencies. They are now officially in the RAC process and can begin all the evaluations for each of the program competencies with the tools that we mentioned before. So the personal assignments, the observation, the task in the workplace, and all these tools that are decided for each competencies of the program. And then a key aspect of this, the process, is that RAC professionals provide support and guidance throughout the evaluations. So candidates, they are evaluated by content specialists, but they still have their RAC counselor that's there for any type of question, stress, worry, or another person that is there to support if they have any need that is required for them to continue, because our goal is for them to continue until the end so they can gain their diploma. RAC professionals are there to provide support and guidance because there is no possibility of failing in RAC. So once a candidate has been accepted, we have to accompany them throughout the evaluations. So in case where a candidate doesn't master all the elements of a competency to satisfaction, then further study is offered. Usually it can be short, it can be an extra assignment that's given by the content specialist. It can be coaching that is offered by the specialist. And then afterwards, the elements are then reevaluated to see if the element of competency is mastered. And then once all these evaluation of all the program competencies have been done, then the candidates receive their diploma. And the candidate received the same type of academic record and diploma as any student that completed the course in class. And I think that's really important to mention, because if they submit their diploma to anywhere, it is not written on it finished in RAC or completed in RAC. It is the same type of diploma and academic record as anyone that followed the whole program in class.
Speaking about the technical aspect, do you know what's the process for records management? Is it all paper-based or digital, or it depends on the college?
Recently, the ministry accepted all electronic signatures on our documents as proof that we offered a RAC process to candidates. So most of the colleges function just with electronic dossier now. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is in the 5 steps that Johanne just talked to us about, there are 2 key mechanisms that are really important to us and that are different from anything that is offered around the world. And I think that's the key for an offer that works really for the people. The first mechanism is the validation of the application. It's the ultimate filter. So with all the self-evaluation forms, and then you have the validation interview, and those 2 steps, well, they are used as filter that can identify the candidates that are ready and that are able to complete all the evaluations that would follow. Because if we have someone that is not able to do it, it's because he needs to go to a course. He needs more information. He needs more training. So those filters are really useful, and they permit us to say which one is a potential candidate and which one is not the potential candidate. That's the first mechanism. The second one is the further study, because it's a fine-tuned mechanism developed to specifically and individually address the need of the candidate. We are not grouping people. We are giving a training that is really fine-tuned, that is really up to the needs of that person. And this mechanism ensures that we can offer RAC to many people with various backgrounds and keep them in the evaluation loop process until they have proven sufficient mastery of each competency. So the value of the diploma at the end, we can say it's the same value as someone who took the course. So that's those 2 mechanisms that we offer that ensure the value of the diploma and that we give something of equity.
And Magali, that second mechanism, the additional education. So could you tell me who designed it or who designs it initially, and then how it's executed? Is it the content expert that will identify from a fixed list of potential education options, and the content expert decides which ones would be most beneficial to the RAC applicant, or something else? Can you let me know how that works?
Okay. Well, normally, I'd say the majority of the cases, the content specialist that evaluated the person will also provide the further study. It's not always the case, but normally it works that way. It's easier that way because he's the person who diagnosed the missing elements of competency, and that is I'd say the person that is the most relevant to give the further study. So he will build a little training for that person just on that point, not on all the competency, but just on the point that is missing. So that's what is interesting. The person will not go in class and follow a whole 45-hour course for something that could be settled in a 3-hour for training with a content specialist. So that's really something that we are proud of.
Sure. It's very tailored. It's a very precise tool, intervention.
Exactly. But in certain programs, we see needs in further study that are coming again and again, and then we can tailor things, and they can be used 1, 2, 3, 4 times in the same year. So it's not always to do again, but it has to be really fine-tuned to the need of the person.
Yeah, determining that a particular person needs that additional education is the precise part. The same resource could be used several times, but you're making sure that this person needs that needs to spend time on that resource. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the evaluation form that we give to the special content, the content specialist, sorry, this evaluation form is built to help him decide and diagnose the needs.
Okay.
So it's a tool that helps all the content specialists of the province in all the programs that we offer. And we could talk about it later, but the Ministry of Higher Education pays for those tools that we give back to all the province.
RAC process is a bit complex, so we make sure that we explain it to various people. So in the last decade, we've made strong efforts to reach out to various resources to explain the RAC process, and then present all programs that are available, because then they can share with other people their process. So that means that a lot of professionals, such as guidance counselors, employment counselors, private and public organizations, are now equipped to suggest RAC to potential candidates or employees. We also invest directly in publicity addressed to potential candidates, so online, newspapers, websites, and social media.
Is there a communication strategy in place, or it's more of a trying to reach the candidates in as many medium as possible?
I think it varies. The publicity is done separately from each college in the province. So we do have group efforts for when we approach organizations, but each college has their own strategy, I guess. I wouldn't be able to say what every college is doing.
So CERAC then just provides the information about the tools and resources available, and then colleges take it and do the further communication through their teams.
Exactly. And then, but when we have a mandate that is either with the other ministries or bigger organizations, then the CERAC will approach people and then usually organize presentations to explain the RAC process.
Okay, thank you. Another question about slightly different from the communication. What are the impacts or some positive impacts that you see RAC brings to candidates?
Yeah, well, candidates that completed the RAC process and obtained their diploma were surveyed in 2016 in a research.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting to see what they had to say about it. They stated that the main outcomes were better working conditions and an increase in salary, which is very important for them and for anybody. And all of them also mentioned an increase in self-esteem and confidence in their competencies. So the key element of their success was the coaching and tutoring offered by RAC professionals. So it's a key element for candidates to pursue and go through all the process and then obtain their diploma.
Right. I was wondering if this research is publicly available.
That's a good question. We have a website at CERAC, and probably it is published on that website. We have a resource part,
Okay.
and all the master degrees or articles that have been published on the RAC process are on that resource page, on our website.
That's great. We'll feature it in the resources section to the episode.
If I can add something that's really interesting to what Magali just said, because the element of their success was coaching and tutoring, because the RAC process is an individual process. So for candidates that are completing the evaluations or the assignments at home and then preparing for evaluations, it can get stressful or difficult if they're working full time. So to have that person that you're either the content specialist or the RAC professional that's there to support them, and sometimes they just need encouragement. It really makes a difference for them to continue in the RAC process when it gets difficult or they get overwhelmed.
Yeah, encouragement is essential, or sometimes perhaps a simple clarification can help them move forward.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they just need a bit of cheerleading to get started.
A pep talk.
Exactly. So if it's a new competency and then they start on a different subject, sometimes it takes them a while to get the motivation, and that's where the RAC professionals come in.
Amazing. Okay. We've been speaking a little bit about research. And so my next question follows up on that. CERAC, as we know, has one of its mandates to support research and innovation in RAC in Quebec. Can you tell us about some notable innovations in Quebec RAC?
Yeah, well, we talked about earlier about tools that are specifically designed for RAC candidates. So notable innovation in that field is the creation of a pool of methodology expertise that Magali and I are part of. So it's a team that is dedicated to guide and coach professionals in Cegeps that are developing RAC tools in any field of study. So the poll was created last year, and we offer coaching to colleges throughout the province. And then on a different type of innovation, the CERAC just hosted a conference from September 26th to the 28th that focused on RAC development and innovations. So that was an event that was the first since 2007. We had a big crowd, so over 250 professionals, directors, and government officials that came to that conference.
Wow, that's great.
And looking into the future, or maybe a not so distant future, what are the current and upcoming opportunities for RAC in Quebec?
When we're looking at what CERAC is doing right now, it's really interesting because we're collaborating with various organizations such as professional associations and large companies that want to implement RAC processes directly in their organizations. We've also had projects with several ministries, so the Ministry of Immigration, the Ministry of Health Services, and we're also in the process of developing RAC programs for indigenous communities. So all these collaborations will lead to new opportunities, I'm sure.
It's definitely great to hear that the RAC and the ministries working together, because there's so much that RAC can bring on the table.
Exactly, and it's interesting because we have a lot of support from the Ministry of Higher Education, and that helps us develop, and then it helps candidates indirectly afterwards too. So we're lucky in that sense.
But we had policies in 2000, in 2002 that were governmental policies, and that helps a lot. That's when it started to flourish, I would say. And then in 2005, we had a financial annex that was really interesting for colleges to offer the service. And that changes a lot of things when you have the financial support to give a certain service to the population. So I think the policies have to come first, and then you can develop more of the service and how you want to reach the person. I would say we are in a third level now. We are looking at the quality of what we offer. It's not the quantity now. We are in the quality of what the colleges offer. So I think it's really going well.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. A final question. If someone is interested in establishing or developing a RAC program, what are some of the strategies and conditions for doing this, for establishing a successful RAC program?
Yeah, well, first of all, if the policies are there, then it will be easier. But if you want to, if the policies are there and you want to develop the service to the candidate, it has appeared in the last 20 years that the winning conditions to establish a successful RAC service are three things. First of all, you have to develop rigorous evaluation tools. So you prove that the process is rigorous. Then you have to train effectively the RAC professionals and the content specialists to make sure that all those persons are well informed of the process and the vision of the ministry. And then you have to provide guidance and tutoring to the candidates. So it showed that if you have those three things, those three elements, then you can offer a real service that will work and that will be useful to the candidates.
Perfect. That's very clear. So that brings us to the end of our time together. On behalf of BC Prior Learning Action Network, we would like to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your expertise, and for this opportunity to learn about PLAR in Quebec.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, really.
It was a pleasure for me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.